What's up, guys? Today we're out here in the garage and we're going to put a water pump on the 2012 Chrysler 300. This car is a SRT, so it has the 6.4 liter in it. These water pumps are the same and the same job to put them on for basically any vehicles with the 5.7, 6.1, or 6.4, including Chargers, Challengers, what have you. So I'll walk around out here, let you guys see the car. This is a car we picked up for my girlfriend. We've probably had it about a year now. And it's got, I think, 82,000 miles on it. So from what I've read, you're lucky if you get to 80,000 miles on these stock water pumps. So consider myself lucky that I am just now doing this. So here we are. I'll show it to you. So here she is. So like I said, it's a 2012 Chrysler 300 SRT. It's got the newer Charger Scat Pack wheels on it. Whenever we got the car, the roof and the chrome trim was wrapped and it was done really crappy. So pulled all that off and we're actually going to have it redone because I like the way it looks and so does she. Pretty clean car. It's got a few flaws here and there, but overall low miles and great running car. It does have the red interior, which is nice. Alright guys, so I actually started pulling this water pump last night. So we've got the bolts out, pulled the hose here that has the thermostat. So basically, I'll catch you up on the process here. Your tensioner goes down here and you put your 3/8 breaker bar here in this square hole and use that to get the tension off the belt. You let the belt slip off the pulleys. Move your idler pulley, which goes here, and at that point you can start taking out all of your bolts all around the outside of the water pump. So like I said, I've already done that. You've got your temperature sender plug here, plugs in right here. You got to unplug that. Like I said before, these water pumps are basically the same on just about all of these modern V8 Hemi cars, and you know, Jeeps for that matter, you know, the Trackhawk, whatever. Some of them have different intake, so like this is somewhat in the way on this car. You know, a lot of them have the throttle body over here facing straight forward, so that actually would probably make this job a little easier. Not that it's a hard job, but it probably would make it a little less in the way. One thing to remember, guys, is you have all these different lengths and styles of bolts. They're all different on this water pump, so it's always a good idea whenever you go to take your bolts out. This is how I do it. So your water pump, lay it out, your new one, put the bolts in the hole where you pulled them out of the old water pump. This will ensure that you put them back in the same hole and won't give you any problems. If you put too long of a bolt in the wrong hole, you can wind up pushing through into a water jacket, or, you know, there's lots of problems that can happen if you wind up torquing down a bolt in the wrong hole and bottoming it out on the hole that the bolt goes into. So basically from this point, I've got to finish getting the water pump out and then we'll go to install this new one. Alright guys, so I got the water pump out, but this job just got a little bigger. The heater hose here, where it goes into the water pump, you're supposed to just be able to pop that guy out. Well, this one, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that sucker was all corroded and it actually broke off in the old water pump. So I guess we will be going to O'Reilly's and grabbing a heater hose, and the guy goes up under the intake and bolts onto the valley cover, it looks like. So we will get a new one of those, and looks like we'll be pulling off the intake manifold. Alright guys, I am going to go ahead and pull off this intake manifold. So it looks like obviously we're going to have to pull our catch can lines we've got injector plugs underneath the covers. So we can just go ahead and pop these covers off so we can see that. Things can be a little tricky sometimes. So there's our cover. You get this little felt pad on the fuel rail. And then you got your injector plugs. In the back we have the plug for the, I think it's for something to do with the variable where it kicks into V4 mode, probably something to do with the fuel. So we got that plug back there, the map sensor plug. Over here, let's pop this cover off. And again, you got the little felt fuel rail cover here. So this vacuum line here, just pop that guy off, pop it out of the clip, and you can kind of just push that back out of the way. That won't come off with the intake. Let's see, fuel rail, fuel injector plugs on this side. You got your vacuum line that comes off the intake and goes down to the brake booster here. So you got the little plug here. Don't think you have to remove the plug. I think the vacuum line actually just comes off of this little sensor here. But you want to remove this from this end, because getting it off of the intake over here is not going to be easy. So I think we'll just pull the plug off of the brake booster side. Also need to remove the boot here from your throttle body, and don't forget about your plug on your intake boot here. Might want to unplug that just so it doesn't get in the way. You've also got your plug on your throttle body. You can take the throttle body off instead of disconnecting the boot, but I think the boot would probably be the easier option here. So let's get busy here and I'll keep you updated. Alright guys, so we've got all of our plugs unplugged, our injectors, map sensor. Came over here, went ahead and undid the plug to the mass airflow sensor, which I'll go ahead and show you guys in here. Be careful with this guy, because it is just basically a little needle shaped piece that sticks down inside your intake boot, so that's probably pretty easy to damage. Got your vacuum line here running to the back. Like I said before, we'll just throw that guy over out of the way. I've got all these injectors unplugged as well. Fuel line, this is a pretty simple little guy. Basically push in on it, you squeeze together on these little clips, and then it just pops right off. If you've driven the car like real recently, you know, within the day or maybe even the day before, you want to get some rags or something put right here underneath the fuel line whenever you disconnect it, because you will have pressure there, residual pressure from driving the car, so it's gonna squirt out and you don't really want fuel all over your engine bay. So got that. I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt this intake manifold, and I'm gonna see if I can't pull it forward to get that back sensor plug that I had talked about. I can't quite get my hand around there to feel what's going on, so if I can get it forward just a little bit, maybe I can see or at least feel what's going on to get that unplugged. Alright guys, got the intake pulled up, got it pulled over far enough to get that plug off of the back. The wires on it are not very long at all, so but it definitely gave me a little more room to work my hand around in there, and it has the same style of plug as all these other plugs. It's got the little red clip you have to pull out, and then it's just to press in and pull. So got that disconnected, and the vacuum line going into the brake booster is being hard-headed, so I'm gonna leave that guy in there and not worry about it. This being up here like this should give me enough room to move it around with just that vacuum line connected, enough to get our tube out. This tube right here is the one that broke off in the water pump, comes all the way back here under the intake to the back and is bolted to the head. So we need to remove this bolt and remove this spring clamp off the heater hose, and we'll have that tube out of there and have to go get a new one. Alright guys, finally got our part in. Got our hose in from Chrysler here. Took them 4 days. And then keep in mind, if you guys wind up having to order this like I did, the part number does not come with the O-ring. You have to order that separately. I got lucky and they had one in stock after the tube came in. So make sure you get that with it, because you're going to want that. So we went ahead and I stuck the new water pump down in here and hand tightened all the bolts in their respective holes. Like I said before, I always lay these out as I take them out. I put them in the new water pump whenever it's off, and as they come out, put them in the same hole they came out of on the old pump. And then once you get the old pump out, switch them over to the old pump, and whenever you go to put the new pump in, you can put them back in these holes on the new pump. That way it just keeps them all in the same spot, since they're different lengths. So, like I said, I went ahead and stuck this guy in here. Whenever you guys go to stick it in, make sure I would put this lower radiator hose on before bolting this to the timing chain cover here, because this spring clamp is gonna be nearly impossible to get back up over the little water pump inlet once it's bolted down. So it just made it a lot easier just to kind of stick the water pump down in there and slide it up with the water pump flopping, if that makes sense. So we're going to torque these bolts down to start with. The dealer manual calls out 18 foot-pounds and no particular torque sequence. So I guess we'll probably just start here and work our way around and go from there. Alright, so got all of our water pump bolts torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. They don't call out any like dual torque specs like a lot of them do. I always like to kind of work my way up to the spec torque, so I actually torqued these to 12 foot-pounds all the way around, and then I came back and then torqued them to 18. It just kind of helps keep things more even, I think. So got all those on, got our new line in here, our heater coolant line, got it bolted back here, pressed into the water pump here, and bolted back in back here, and got the hose reconnected with the spring clamp. I will post the part number to this just in case you guys need it. It's on a piece of paper, or on a sticker rather, on the tube itself, and I could luckily still read it on the old one, so I just called up and ordered the OEM part. So like I said, I'll post that part number in the description in case you guys need to order it and can't read your sticker. We went ahead and plugged our coolant temp sensor here, and I went ahead and plugged this guy back in just to keep it out of the way as I set the intake back into place. And I guess now we need to go ahead and set the intake. Alright, got our intake back on. Let's see, we got our injector plugs all plugged back in. Made sure all the little red caps are pushed in. That goes for all of these plugs on this whole thing. I think almost all of them have these. It's like a little safety clip. So we got our mass airflow plug here. Back in the back we have that sensor plug for the fuel rail shut off or whatever. Don't forget your plug on the bottom of your throttle body here. If you guys had to take your intake off, don't forget to replug the plug into the vacuum port on the brake booster. Let's see, got our fuel rail hooked back up. vacuum line up here on the intake that runs from the back. Made sure that was clipped back into the clip here. Again, if you have a catch can, hook those lines back up. If you don't have a catch can, you probably wouldn't have unhooked anything because you just have the PCV line there. So got our thermostat housing back on, tensioner, idler, and getting that belt rooted was interesting. I'll try to throw a routing diagram or a picture up right here. And whenever you guys are torquing down your intake manifold, these things are torqued to 9 foot-pounds. So whenever you guys torque these, I know a lot of guys like to go back, especially on like the old school stuff, go back after it's heat cycled and retorque everything. You don't want to do that on this plastic intake. If you do that, it actually can crack out around where the bolts go, and that can be very bad. You end up with having to replace your intake, and these intakes are not cheap. So basically, if you retorque those, this intake is made to only be torqued down cold, so there's no need to go back and retorque it. So everything's on up front. Got all of our sensors plugged back in, and it is time to throw the covers back on. One thing I did forget to mention on this intake, whenever you're torquing it down, there is a torque sequence for this. I'll try to throw the diagram up here, and you guys follow that. I think it goes here, and then kind of jumps around. Make sure everything's torqued equally. So whenever you guys do that, make sure you follow that torque sequence, just to make sure it's all sealed down as it should be. All right, covers are back on, and everything on this sucker is buttoned up. So tomorrow I'll have to run and get some coolant, fill the sucker back up. We'll let it run, make sure it's not leaking, and take her on a test drive. And we'll let you guys ride along for that. Maybe show you guys the exhaust. We had the exhaust done here a couple weeks ago. Sounds pretty dang good. Doesn't have tips on it yet. We just got those in today, actually, so got to get those put on. Shout out to Cooper Baguetti. He gave me the idea on these Amazon strip lights here. I actually bought the 10-pack. Gonna put those suckers in the garage. Maybe give me a little more light in here. I only got the one little light up there on the ceiling on each side, so hopefully it'll brighten things up, make it easier building my motor and stuff in here. So yeah, we will see you guys tomorrow. Alright guys, headed to go get some coolant this morning. I put about a half gallon I had left at the house in, and started her up, made sure she had no leaks, kind of drove her around the neighborhood a little bit. Seemed to be good, didn't see any leaks or anything, but it's definitely got a little bit of air in the system. So headed to get some coolant and gonna do the bleeding procedure. I'll show you guys how to do that as well and see how she does. Alright guys, got this sucker topped off with coolant. I went through the bleeding procedure on these things. They've got this little bleeder screw right here in the water pump. Just take that guy all the way out with the car not running, and fill your reservoir over here until it starts coming out the hole. Once it starts coming out the hole, throw that screw back in, let her run, warm up, you know, take her on a little test drive, and then of course let her cool off enough, then pull that screw back out and do it again, just to make sure. Once it's coming out the hole, it may be already coming out the hole whenever you do it after doing it the first time. Put that guy back in, make sure your coolant's in the fill level on your reservoir over here, and should be good to go. We took her on a probably 30-mile test drive just now and don't see any leaks, So it's time to get this engine bay all cleaned back up and go out and have some fun.